Welcome to Ask the Professor. I'm your host, Professor Ben. We go live every Wednesday at 11:45 Eastern so that we can answer your questions and talk about all things business, influence, leadership, and all the challenges that come with those things. And today we are joined by our producer, Ari. Thank you, as always, for keeping us on track, making the show happen. And we've got a return guest, Chris Allen. Yes, the one and only. Thank you for coming back on the show. And for those of you that missed the first episode that Chris was in, Chris is Vice President of Sales at Augmentt. He is a forever learner. And I gotta say, probably one of the best sales to sales leadership career stories that I've seen and that I've heard of. So thank you for being on the show, Chris.
Well, thank you for having me, Ben. It's always a pleasure. Third time's a charm. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm going to put some pressure on you because in our last show, we got together. We talked about great salespeople becoming sales leaders and the trials and tribulations and the how-tos. You gave some great insight on the how-tos for those up-and-coming leaders that are making that pathway in their career. But here's what's cool. This must be a really hot topic, Chris, because we had record-breaking over 20,000 viewers across all platforms that watched that show just in the first week that it was released. So I know it's not millions, but it's in the tens of thousands and it's growing. So thank you for all the insight you provided. That was great.
Thank you. Yeah, that's amazing. I feel famous.
You're pretty famous, man. I mean, you're pretty famous. So we promised the audience that we're going to pick back up with structural items on the team, right? So like, okay, I made it. I'm a leader. What do I need to do? We talked about getting there and our mindset and what, some of the key things. Now let's talk about the structure. What do I need to set up? What's expected from me, from leadership? What's expected from me for those that I am now leading? And how do I put that all together? And if we have time, we'll also talk a little bit about succession planning from both sides, right? So succession planning, meaning I'm an individual contributor and I am looking to grow in my career. What do I need to do right now to make that happen? And also succession planning, meaning I'm a supervisor or a manager and I'm ready to take the next step. What do I need to do with my team to prepare them for that move? So if we have time to get to that, then we will. If we don't, Chris, then live, I'm going to ask you to come back on the show. But let's see what we can handle in the next 20 minutes. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Love it. One thing that stood out to me as you were talking about succession planning, I think for new leaders moving into a role, one maybe just piece of advice that I would always give. I've seen a lot of, you might disagree with me on this as well, Ben. So we'll see.
Hey, I might. That's okay. That's what the show is about.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of content out there where people are told to move slowly, methodically, and really understand the business before they start making wholesale changes. And I totally understand that. Typically, especially in sales, when you're moving into a leadership role, it's because there's a gap in the business and people are expecting change quickly. I'm not saying paint the door red and change everything. Don't ever do that. But what I am saying is you got to look for quick wins. You got to look for areas of improvement that are going to impact the business and make those changes quickly. Because as soon as you start making those changes, you'll start to see leadership have more confidence in what you're doing and more confidence in you. And if the team see the impact that you're making, they'll start to buy into that change. Bonus points if you tell them what you're going to do, get them to be the agents of change and help them or get them to help you make those changes. I think that's really, really crucial.
I'm going to jump in on this one, Chris. So I'm not going to give it to you 100%, but I'm not going to also just completely slam that down. What you're saying is definitely important, right? You're put in that position for a reason. There are some expectations. They want to see things move upward. In sales, it's all about that constant growth. The last thing we want to do is hit terminal velocity and just be stagnant, right? Yeah. So we have to make sure that we're growing. And then let's go back to some sales fundamentals, right? Because when we say, hey, you're new in this position, so go change something, it's just almost like when we're in a sales meeting with a prospective customer and we make these assumptions and we're wrong, right? So one of the most important things that we do in sales is listening, observing, researching ahead of the meeting. Yes, there's a lot of cool things we got to do during the meeting, but the pre-meeting planning is so important. And that skill set that we build as salespeople is going to carry through as sales leaders or growing sales leaders.
Yeah.
So one of the things you got to keep in mind, to your points here, Chris, is let's observe, let's listen, let's research, and let's look at whose shoes are we filling, right? If we're filling a team that was just flourishing and the person before you was promoted into a higher role because of how great everything was going on this team that you're inheriting, then okay, maybe we got to make sure we keep the status quo and keep that growth going. How can we do that? In your example, what if the person before you wasn't doing very well, right? The last thing we want to do is just say, hey, we're going to keep things as is for the next 6 months so I don't rock the boat. Definitely don't want to do that either. So observing, listening, research ahead of time, and knowing what you're stepping into is such an important part of it, and probably a good transition into structure. But tell me what you think about that. Like thinking of like the specific situation may call for different things. What's your feedback?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I can give you an example actually. When I started in this role, there was definitely an appetite for change, I would say, but you don't know what you don't know. So I, before starting, got access to Salesforce and I built my own reports and I looked at all the accounts and the opportunities and who was managing them and who the top reps were and all that good stuff. And so you come in with a fairly good background, like you don't know the minutia of everything, I would say, but you have a good idea of what's working and what isn't. So you've got some assumptions. And the next phase to that is always understanding the people and understanding what motivates them so that you can get buy-in with the team, right? So that's just one example of coming in and doing the research. Obviously, you have to do the research and understand what needs to be changed. And then the last piece that I'll say is you really have to have a very clear understanding of, depending on your position, what your manager, your director, the VP, the executives, the board, whoever, what they're looking for from you. I have a good friend who says one of the best skills you can have is the ability to manage up and really understand what your manager cares about. Because if you know what they care about, then you can manage against that and do really well.
Yeah, and I'm yes to that 100%. So those that are listening, sometimes it's easy to forget that we do have to manage up, even if our position has a C in front of it, right? Like a CRO or anybody in the C-suite. Chances are we've got a board that we have to answer to, and we have to manage up. We can't just A, ignore it, or B, just do whatever they say. We've got to be able to manage the situation because sometimes we've got the most information that we can use. So when we're setting up a structure, you made me think of something right just now, Chris, is we don't need to get into SMART goals, but hopefully everyone listening knows what SMART goals are. Or if we've got a visual for that, great. If not, we should know anyway. Oh, here we go. You always have got something up your sleeve there. Or thank you. So like, again, the relevancy when we're setting goals. So when we're setting up a structure, setting up goals for our sales team, Chris, what you're talking about is regardless of how big your title is or where your title is, your goals have to be relevant. The structure that you create has to be relevant to what the organization is asking for and looking for, because that's going to dictate what success looks like.
Yeah. I mean, another good example of this is I use OKRs, right, for my team. So everyone has objective key results. And those will never be relevant, and no one will ever know how to build out their OKRs unless they know what the team goal is, what the company goal is, and generally what the target is for the year, right? So every quarter, we present those goals to everyone, and they build their own OKRs. And we were chatting about this earlier. My team have three that they're focused on. What are the three things that are always going to move the needle that we have to be laser focused on? You can really overcomplicate that. And I, again, as we talked about, I'm a victim of that. I've definitely overcomplicated those in the past. But if someone's focused on three things and they know how it impacts the business, then it's a really good motivator for them and much easier to manage against, I would say.
Oh, heck yeah, absolutely. So for those that are just now chiming in, setting up the structure, setting up the OKRs or KPIs for your team, what does success look like if we make this a convoluted mess right? You've got to do a little bit of this, a little bit of everything, then nothing becomes important. So the fact, Chris, that you've streamlined it down to 3 OKRs, right? 3 things that are going to matter the most, that when you nail these as a team or as an individual, if you're talking to them, that's when we know we're going to see success.
Yeah.
And as a human, I can grasp that and run with it versus get confused, flustered.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got 15 or 20 OKRs that, are all relevant, but, are into the minutia of things, right? Then they become completely unmanageable and you don't know week over week which you should be focused on. Ultimately, if you have 3 primary goals, all the other smaller stuff will fall underneath those. And I think you mentioned something there, right? Accountability. Like, people need to be accountable to those goals, and the best way to keep them accountable and have them really take ownership of those goals is to have them build them themselves. They gotta take ownership there, right? And if they understand where the company needs to go, it's a lot easier for them to build them themselves and manage them.
And what's really powerful about that too, so you're making my brain go a million different directions here. But one of the things about OKRs or KPIs, first off, we forget the word, the K, right, stands for key, meaning that it's just the really, really, really important ones. So 3 makes sense. So we might have a lot of things that we measure in metrics, right? But the KPIs, the key performance indicators, has got to be just the really important ones.
Yeah.
So that part's key there too. And then when you say, hey, let's have the team build their own. So again, leaders that are in the seat right now or those that are coming up to it, when you look at OKRs, you look at KPIs, it's yes, the metrics matter. Yes, the performance matters. But really what it boils down to, it's all about the conversation, right? If I set the best OKRs January 4th, whatever day we go back to work, and I don't talk about them again or have discussions or coach on them until December 31st, totally waste of time, right? Totally wasteful. If, on the other hand, if I set some pretty good ones up with the team and I'm talking about them on a regular basis, formally in my weekly one-on-ones or biweekly one-on-ones, and then even just on Teams chat as like where we are, how we're measuring ourselves, that is where we're keeping the team on track. So it's those discussions that matter. And if they're building their own, so much easier to have fruitful discussions with your team. That's huge.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. They have to take ownership, and it ties into succession planning, right? Like, giving them ownership of something that's outside their day to day. Like, every rep knows they need to create deals, they need to move deals, they need to close deals. They've got all these million things that they're working on. If they're building their own KPIs or OKRs, then it's something outside of their typical day to day that they get experience with, and then they can use that as experience as they grow, right? And as they move into other positions, it helps them understand what leadership is. And one thing I'll mention is, the burden of leadership. There's usually, depending on your level, a million different KPIs that you're measured against and that you're constantly tracking.
Of course.
That's your responsibility. That's not the responsibility of your team. And to throw a million things onto their plate is distracting to them and confusing and never really works out too well. So I caution people against throwing too much onto people's plates.
Oh my God. So, you made me think the word capacity, right? So it's like, does that individual contributor have the capacity to do the things they need to do to meet those metrics? And as leaders, we forget about that, right? So for those of you that are old enough to remember dial-up, when you had to download something, Chris, don't act like you're old enough. But when you had to download something on the internet, you didn't have the bandwidth to do something. So if you try to download too many things, it just froze. Nothing happened. So us old timers all learn, like, okay, let's just download one thing at a time, because that way at least we'll get through it, as opposed to just create a clog in our bandwidth. And we do that as leaders sometimes, where we just like throw everything at our team and expect them to figure it out, instead of help them manage their capacity. Because if they have the capacity and you're coaching them and they know the direction they're trying to go, they are going to be successful.
Ben, you taught me this. I remember earlier in my career just having so many different ideas and things that I wanted to roll out and initiatives. And you stopped me in my tracks and said, hey, like, they only have the capacity to take on one new thing at a time. So roll one thing out, get them to execute against it, get them really good at it, and then you can introduce something new. And I think, again, anyone moving into a leadership role, usually because they've been the boots on the ground and they've seen all the little things that are annoying for, for the reps or the obstacles that are in the way of them really effectively selling, they want to change everything at once. Prioritize. Always prioritize, understand what leadership care about, understand what the reps care about, and figure out what's going to move the needle the most, and just prioritize that.
Heck yeah, absolutely. And that's what's going to bring success. So you think about, oh yeah, please. All right, go ahead.
I was like, you actually answered one of our audience questions. Someone just being promoted to a sales manager, and there's some things change for the better of the team, and how to bring in a new structure, processes, and mentality without getting pushback that this is the way that it's always done.
Ooh, oh man, there's so much on that one. Chris, I'll let you take first dibs at this one, and then we can just keep going at it. But this is a great one. What's the first thing that comes to mind for you?
First thing that comes to mind is there's a lot going on in this question, and that it feels a little bit like the example I just gave, right? A new manager coming in has a million things they want to change. My advice is, first off, don't boil the ocean, because that's a quick way to, I don't want to say failure, but burnout. Mentality is the one that sticks out to me. I think without the right mentality in your team and your organization, structure and process don't really matter. You can have the best process in the world, but if people don't have the mentality to fight and win and really execute, then you're never going to get there. So that's where I would focus all of my time and attention at the start. Get the team bought in, help them have a voice, let them surface what they think the issues are, understand how solving those issues are going to impact the business. And if you can get them bought into being change agents, then everything becomes so much easier. And if they're really, really bought in and you're trying to build, a succession plan and have people move into leadership roles eventually, you mentioned structure there, then have them own initiatives, have them execute on it and be there as a foil and a help for them to execute.
I love that last part there, like get them to take ownership on what those changes are, how we're going to improve them. And I'm going to jump back to the front of this. You had mentioned, great question there from some of our audience members. Thank you. So you had mentioned, Chris, like we got to get aligned with the board or with leadership and know what to expect. So for this person here to answer this question as directly as we can is, what's your support mechanism up top? Do they want to see these changes? Does leadership want to see these changes? If they do, then you got the support you need. And then we got to decide how hard we're going to drive those changes in the front line.
Yeah.
Okay. If leadership says, we brought you in this position to maintain the status quo, then let's go back to what you were saying, Chris. Let's change one thing at a time. Let's make some small changes that will have a big impact. So people start feeling good about some of the new things you're bringing to the team, right? They're not getting freaked out. Plus the leadership is telling you not to change too much, but in your heart of hearts, you're seeing like, hey, we got to make some changes here. Make those small one changes at a time that'll have the biggest impact. Let everyone start to realize it and feel good about it. And they're going to come to you looking for more. It won't be a big fireworks display, right? No one's going to come to you in these situations and say, please change everything, new sales manager. But what they will do is they'll notice that your feedback, your coaching, your tweaks are making an impact, and they'll be hungry for more. And that's when you build that momentum to make bigger and bigger changes. And remember, you're managing upward and you're managing the front line. You've got to do both.
Yeah. And you can't be afraid to say no as well. Like ultimately, sometimes there's certain quality of life changes, or there's things that maybe annoy reps that are just a necessity. Like the one that always sticks out is, oh, I hate filling out notes in the CRM. Like, yeah, I know you do, but that's your job. So do it. And here's why you need to do it. And as long as you can articulate the reason behind it, if there's still a problem, then you got to start thinking about some other resolutions that are not as fun, I would say.
Man, so Chris, you just opened up a whole can of worms, and we're out of time at the same time. But we need to have a whole show for sales leadership dedicated to how to get your reps to utilize the CRM to their maximum capacity. So those in the audience that are watching now, send your LinkedIn comments or YouTube comments. If that's a topic that you want us to cover, I bet we can get Chris back on the show to talk about that, because I know that's a hot topic for a lot of sales leaders. And if the audience wants it, Chris, we got to deliver, right?
Oh, 100%. And that, I love that topic. I also love using the CRM. So.
It is an important topic. Guys, we're out of time. So Chris, I'm going to ask you live. Can we get you to come back in? Let's talk a little bit more about succession planning, from both sides, like we mentioned at the top of the show, and then maybe even the CRM topic. Are you open to coming back live again?
100%. I'd love it.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you guys for joining us. We're going to be back here again live on Wednesday at 11:45 Eastern. And ask your questions. Do that at LinkedIn. Do that on YouTube, on Instagram. We gather all those questions, and Ari puts them together, gets them on the show for us, and we do the best to get to as many of them as we possibly can. Ask the professor. That's the whole goal. We'll see everyone next Wednesday at 11:45 Eastern. Thanks, guys. See you guys.
Bye, everyone.